Well, you break through to another level, and then you have to sort of occupy the whole niche of that other level. Imagine if you are going up a never-ending skyscraper, and you have to go up to the next floor. Well, before you get up to the next floor, as you get higher and higher, the air may thin out and whatnot. It's sort of like that 8,600-story building that I have Bit von Rheingold in his acid trip going through, where Dennis Hopper keeps falling over the railing because of his urinating. And as you get higher, you're going to have to get acclimated, and so you have to sort of go up and then spread out, and then steel yourself to go up to the next level. And so that's just the natural progression of things in science and art. And you have a Whitman, and then there's 50 years or so before Pound and Eliot come along, and Pound and Eliot do some things, but they are not really the important things. Their import is more just that they sort of cleared the way for other people who are better, like a Robinson Jeffers or a Robert Frost, or a Hart Crane, or a Wallace Stevens, these people who go far beyond Pound and Eliot.
A quote that had some more resonance was, when fiction doesn't contain any more eyes above it, then it is dead, in the sense that when you are unread, then the literature no longer has any sort of importance. You think that in 10, 20,000 years, that will be the state in most literature, that not necessarily that it won't yield value on a historical level, but as soon as it's no longer needed to be read and consumed by the masses, that it no longer has any kind of greatness associated with it?
Literature has never been consumed by the masses. Writing has. Even if we go back a couple of hundred years, when things became relatively cheap and people could read, some of the poetry of the Romantics, some Wordsworth books, or the Bible even. Real literature has never been mass popular, and I could see that even if people get to a point where they have transcended bodies to a certain degree, or they can upload things into some kind of ether just by thinking to do it via whatever mechanical implants, I think that there will still be an interest to read, simply because it was the first art form that you could convey deep and complex thoughts without actually uttering them to someone, writing them down. I can read Homer. I can read about Achilles. I can read about Ajax. I can read about Odysseus and know their basics. Or I can read about Beowulf because someone wrote it down. And so there is that writing, literature, in a sense, is probably going to end up a precursor art to some art that is purely non-physical. But I think that when there will be when I can enjoy a film or a play in my mind that's being projected by someone, or some thing that puts it out into the cosmos, I'll still be able to say, or someone 1,000, 10,000 years from now will say, that's interesting. That reminds me of a trope in one of Dan Schneider's books, which took that trope from an early filmmaker in the 20th century, Tarkovsky or something.
It would have to be something outside of telekinesis, though, because telekinesis would be sort of just like implanting a film, where you would get the narrative and you would still not be able to have the inner workings of the mind and viewing certain things to it. So it still would be a lesser art form than writing if it was such a thing as telekinesis.
Well, it would be telepathy. Telekinesis is actually controlling physical objects. Telepathy is mind-to-mind communication, but perhaps I don't know. I'm not going to be around for it, so.
Well, that's just pure speculation. Let's speak about The Thing After Death. This is your first play. You wrote it in, what was it, 10 days? And,
let's see. From June 12th to the 21st. Yeah, 10 days.
And this is what you called the beginnings of your spoke theory, but it's actually the axle theory, as you correct in your second play.
Yeah.
Speaking a little bit about axle theory, as it's been redefined, and also the contents of this play, the narrative structure.
Well, this goes against. This is basically what I said in an earlier video when I misspoke. It wasn't the spoke. I was looking up and said, "Oh no, it's the axle." In that dramas, even the modernist dramas, still tend to revolve around one big axle. The wheel turns around one axle dramatically. I use the Charlie Chaplin Modern Times with him slithering through some gears, and the problem with that is it doesn't just like total immersion is a more realistic way of conveying dialogue, even though there can be poesy behind it, a deeper layers behind it. By just having the one axle, it's like a whirlpool pulling you towards melodrama rather than realistic drama. And as great a play as I think, for example, Iceman Cometh, or Streetcar Named Desire, or Long Day's Journey into Night, or The Glass Menagerie, or Death of a Salesman, or Fences, or any of these great plays by modern masters of the 20th century they all revolve around some kind of a secret, or one shocking act, or this, that, or the other thing. And even in something like Long Day's Journey into Night, it's basically about the secret of a family, and not really the secret, but I guess you could call it the secret, the alcoholism and the avoidance of reality of that family. That's it. And as well done as it is, you kind of get, at least if you're familiar with drama and melodrama, you kind of know where the play is going the first time you're going to read it, if you've read other plays of its type. And so by having 4 or 5 axles, you mitigate that, and you get more towards a real drama, even if you have some comedy in it, which this first play, That Thing After Death, does have. The big axle in that play, or the seeming big axle, is the fact that you have 2 main characters, a woman in her late 50s and a woman in her early 50s, who haven't seen each other for about 4 decades, after the older woman had this classic melodrama situation of being a babysitter who was seduced, apparently, by the father of the younger woman. And the father, the seducer, has died. The play opens with the younger woman just leaving the hospital with her husband, waiting to get out of the hospital parking lot. It's a scene that I look to La Notte by Antonioni, but yet it's not really just about the inevitable confrontation. She has my character, the character based on me, the Danny Wagner character, is a former lover of hers. She has her husband. There's scenes. It's not only about the affair, but it's about the relationship of the 2 women. It's about the relationship of this woman with this Danny Wagner character, who she rejected years ago and married a safe guy, a nice guy, a guy who owns his own business, who apparently loves her and supports her. But the character of Megan, who is the artistic character, which I based off sort of the general persona of the Megan Follows actress from, most famously from the Anne of Green Gables stuff, but I've seen her in a number of other roles, and she, in her younger years, she often played similar characters, these sort of self-righteous, spunky, perky kind of characters. So that's where her character came from. And then the character of Valerie Vivello is sort of an older, sluttier version of the Valerie Bertinelli character's persona from some of her stuff from the 80s as well. But it's not, the play really isn't about infidelity. And the whole trilogy, which I call it the Infidelity Trilogy, there are instances of infidelity, but they are not the main spoke. But they are the de facto main spoke that's going to, I think, draw people who would watch this or read this to read it or watch it.
Axel, not spoke.
Oh, Axel, yeah.
As you were speaking about this, I pulled up some of these analyses of what is his name, Shin Jang Jong.
Yeah.
And I wanted to speak a little bit of some of his points in service to the play.
Well, you can also, if you have time too, if you want to talk about some of the poems he analyzes, we can do that too. We didn't do that last time, but
one of the points he makes though about the Megan character that I disagreed with was that she's a Joey. When she's not a Joey in the lead, she doesn't have all the angst of an artist, but none of the talent. She may have had talent, and she seems to live a generally well-mannered kind of life. She doesn't feel the angst that Joey would have. So speak about that element. I think you pointed that out as well to him.
Yeah, I did. I put it in the comments.
Although it's a very thoughtful analysis through and through, he also misinterprets the title without giving all the multitude of meanings that it deserves.
Well, yeah, but he's also 20 years old, and for a 20-year-old kid living in Singapore, boy, he has quite an impressive knowledge of English language writers and film and drama and whatnot. So I'll say that. Yeah, as Woody Allen defines, or has the character she's not self-defined. I think it's the Diane Keaton character that defines her sister as having, you know, all the angst of an artist, but none of the talent. Megan is able to make a living from her art. She's married the safe guy who runs his own business. She doesn't have any financial worries, so to speak of. And the character of Danny Wagner is seen as sort of a script doctor. She writes these B kind of horror, exploitation kind of films, you know, Sharknado kind of films, and he script doctors for her, but he doesn't want his name on the films. She just gives, I guess, some money out of whatever money she's paid for him to help her, and they apparently have, you know, a long-standing 25, 30-year relationship back to when they were younger or whatever. It's never specified, but she is a play it safe one. She specifically says, or makes it known, that she would have felt inferior to Danny. He's got more talent than her. You know, she chooses the safe life. She's very much conservative, not necessarily politically conservative, but she's a very conservative person. She plays it safe, which seems to be the opposite of the Valerie character, because the Valerie seems to have let it all hang out. She's 4 times married, thrice divorced, and widowed once. She had a couple of mastectomies, and yet through this all, she seems to still be a man magnet. She seems to still be very sexually open. She beds 2 guys in the play that she picks up at bars. She seems to be flirting with the Danny character at the funeral and whatnot. And it's just an interesting dichotomy, because what lesson is to be learned? Megan plays it safe, and in the end, you know, she ends the play in bed making love with her husband, whereas Valerie ends up being boffed by some sleazeball, or apparent sleazeball, in a never-ending cycle of self-loathing, it seems, at least, with Megan. So in that way, the play has a conventional view, seemingly, of life. Although I would say it doesn't, but at least in that aspect, it seems to do.
One of the points he makes that is very good is revealing the atmosphere that you have inherent in some of the inversions that you use that other playwrights would not, such as having flashbacks and such that aren't as important to the characters as they would have been made in, say, Death of the Salesman, where that would be the whole site of the play. Speak a little bit about that. Speak generally just about young writers interpreting your works, whether or not you think they get all that needs to be done.
Well, no, and you know, there are times in some poems when Jessica's talked and we've talked about it, that I think that you've missed some things too. But that's nothing to be ashamed of, because I couldn't go into, say, into a music studio and understand why a certain quote unquote chord progression enhances or detracts from a melody. I don't have the vocabulary to do that. So there's nothing to be ashamed about that. But you want to learn these kinds of things. For example, I was listening to, and I'm going to listen to a lot of classical music,